just want to make sure.
Good evening, and welcome to our August 8th, 2017 meeting of the Stowe Board of Selectmen. As always, we will start out with public input. Is there any public input on any matter not down for the agenda? Seeing none, I will go on to Chairman's comments. First, of course, to thank Don Hawks for serving in my absence at the last meeting. I saw the beginning of the meeting. He seems to, he's got all the experience that you need to do a good selectman meeting. I point out that there'll be a concert at Stowe Community Park this Thursday. I believe it's at 7 p.m. And also, of course, Wheels and Wings, our annual joint venture between Nancy's Airfield Cafe and the Stowe Rotary, will be meeting, we'll be having an event where you can see classic cars and I don't know, not classic airplanes, but interesting airplanes every Thursday night through the end of this month. The Complete Streets Working Group or Committee is looking for a member. I hope you would all be interested and enough to join such a group if you do have the time. Mass Municipal Association, which is the organization that affiliates local cities and towns in a kind of a, I would say, an association, or, well, it is an association, but it's an organization for better government and sharing matters. They will be having their September or fall meeting this September 22nd here in Stowe. And we're planning for that. It should be quite an event. Maureen was very enthusiastic about it. She convinced me not to be a stick in the mud, so we're looking for a good time. Finally, this is something that our public safety selectman guru, Mr. Ryan, will comment on later in the meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew about this right up front, and that is the Stowe public safety officials did a great job in a very adverse weather condition last Wednesday, and they deserve a lot of credit for ensuring safety and some of our citizens who were imperiled by that rain and hail. And as I said, Mr. Ryan will speak more about that later. Now, any member have any comments on the correspondence that we've received? No. I'll just note that the state has approved the building project on the corner of Pine Point and Sudbury Road, and that'll come before us for a vote next meeting, August 22nd. Seeing nothing on correspondence, we can proceed directly to the discussion, vote, revision of the special liquor license for the Ari Schultz benefit event on August 19th at Pine Bluffs. And first off, why don't you come up and introduce yourself, Mr. Conley?
Yeah, Bill Conley from 109 Barton Road.
How you doing, Bill?
Again. How are you?
Good to see you again.
Hi.
First off, we want to thank you for all your hard work in cooperatively working with the town in making progress towards an operational plan and obtaining the appropriate licensing and insurance.
Yep.
We appreciate your understanding on some of the matters that we've had to bring to your attention. And we also want to thank the town employees, some of whom are in this room, who've worked really hard trying to help you get ready for this event. It's a, as I said at the first meeting where we took this matter up, it's not something that we do in our ordinary course. So we've had to make some arrangements, some long-range planning. And I know Maureen has been and can be very helpful to you on getting insurance.
She has been. Yep.
Insurance is key for this event from all the vendors. And you know, at this point, you can just have, I think, Maureen do most of that work for you, if you'll let her. it would probably be the best. Now, having said that, one of the things that you've been understanding about and been cooperative about is the revising or agreeing to our revising the liquor license. Originally, as we approved it, and it was a great catch by our Ingeborg, our Hageman, to notice that we had to approve for liquor, but you scaled that back a little bit, and I
Yes.
think for good reason. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about that?
As far as liquor,
Yeah.
to be honest, when I left this meeting, I had a conversation with the chief of police, and on the side, he said, you know, how about a good show of faith, we just drop the liquor part? And I said, Bill, it's fine with us. I mean, the key was really beer and wine anyway.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a technicality as to how you fill out the form. So liquor was honestly never really a big deal, so.
No, we thank you. There still will be beer and wine, of course, but there were also, the statute for approving these licenses changed back in April, and some of us were unfamiliar with those changes, and there are special requirements for a liquor license. So we are talking about that. So we, that it just would have made it difficult or cumbersome to proceed with. So again, we appreciate your understanding and scaling back that request. Are there any questions or comments on this liquor license? Then maybe I'll just ask the town administrator for an overview of the status of the operational planning.
Nope, I think it's a good thing. You know, I've had a number of conversations with Chief Bosworth and Chief Landry also, and a couple conversations with Laura, and you know, they've been very appreciative that you've been willing to work with them, as Brian says, cooperatively, to make sure that, you know, we have an event that everybody can be happy with, and you know, it's, as Brian said, it's not something we do every day, and we probably should have started planning for it before, but it's working out well. So you know, all the conversations I've had with the public safety folks have been good.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have the same intentions in mind, so
Right.
it has been a lot of work, but working with public safety has not been that difficult.
Right.
And wherever we can mitigate risk, we all want to do that. So it's in everyone's best interest just to have a safe event. And it's more of a family event these days. You know, we have a lot more kids events, and we're selling tickets. I think we're up to 170 tickets, and probably half of those are kids and families. And we're really trying to reach out because that's what the family wants. And we've actually scaled back the price of the tickets. I don't know if you guys realize that. Originally, the tickets were $50 a piece for food and a couple of drinks. And that was mainly because the cost was about $25, and we wanted to raise $25 for the family. And then Mike Schultz reached out to us, and due to the fact that he had a limited number of people allowed for the kind of the funeral and things like that, he wanted this to be a community day of closure. And he had a lot of friends and a lot of family that he wants to be there. So we dropped the ticket price down to cost. So now we're selling tickets for $25, and that's exactly what it's costing us for the barbecue and for the a couple of drinks.
For those watching at home or those reading about the accounts of this meeting would like to know that, thank you. And I know Mr. Hawks covered it at our last meeting, but of course the condolences of the Selectmen and also the entire community are with the Schultz family.
Thank you.
The only thing I noticed on here, and it's probably a nit, but I believe that the agreement now is that you'd stop selling beer and wine at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, yes.
So on here it appears to say 7.
May I change that?
Sure.
Thank you for that catch, Mr. Ryan. If this were a meeting conducted according to Robert's rules, I don't know if we could do this because we need somebody who was overvoted to bring this up for reconsideration.
We haven't voted yet.
I know, I'm about to call for it, but I'm
Oh.
saying we have voted for it the last time. Normally, enough with my
Not subject to
arcania.
Robert's
We're not
rules.
subject to Robert's Rules of Order, so anyone can make a motion
And it's a friendly motion.
to, then may I hear a friendly motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board vote to issue a modified special liquor license for the Schultz family benefit to replace the license that was originally issued at the July 11, 2017 meeting The modified license will allow service of beer and service of wine and malt beverages only, and not hard liquor. This applies to the event planned for Saturday, August 19th at the Pine Bluffs Recreation Area.
Second.
Having a motion and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Now, Mr. Wrigley, do you care to give us an overview of the progress you've been making on the operational planning for this event?
Essentially, the rec director and chair of the rec commission, I believe you've had more than one meeting and/or communication with them, together with both the fire and police chief. So the reports I've gotten from all three, I'm more than satisfied that, first of all, the public safety plan, according to the fire chief, he'll have 4 EMT firefighters set up that day. I believe they're volunteering for that. We've got a lender ambulance, pro ambulance, that will be on site as well, so that we can keep our staff working in our ambulance there. Police chief has one detail for the event, and then he's putting an additional man on staffing for the day, so essentially you have the potential of a second one if, for any reason, whether it's traffic or other matters. So I'm completely satisfied with all of those things on the ground. The important thing, I think, for you folks too, is that we're going to have named volunteers that you'll provide to Laura. I think you'll discuss that. And the reason that's important for both parties is that under our liability insurance, we're able to employ, using that term broadly, volunteers, and then they're protected under our liability insurance as long as they're named, they have a task assigned to them, and then, more importantly, that there's a STOW staff person who's taken the responsibility and has the authorization to direct the task of those volunteers. If those conditions met, all the volunteers that are named on that sheet and under Laura's control will be covered for liability. So whatever it is they do that day, I'm sure they'll do it well. If there's a mishap or something occurs where there's an injury or damage or something, they'll be covered. So they don't have to worry about that. The exposure for liability for that event. Everything else, we're still working out details on getting appropriate liability for vendors and such.
Any luck with the one-day event policy?
Yes, I have a quote here for a one-day policy. And this was not local, so I have 3 outstanding quotes that are supposed to be in today, and they weren't. But there was a local one from Tony Mancuso out of Shrewsbury, and he's actually coming to the event, and he's an insurance broker, so I'm hoping to get him because he's a little bit more invested in the event than some other people. So hopefully, he already guaranteed that we're getting it. I've worked through all the issues. He already found an insurance company that will handle it.
Okay, good.
So it's just, I hadn't contacted him. I got his name on Monday morning, so
Yeah, that's
he's been
great.
rushing around. But
Good.
I have a feeling I'm going to go with his quote. But I'll have at least
Yeah,
2
at
of them.
least 2, great.
There was I believe, a concern about the swimmers and any liability there. And speaking with Maureen, just my personal opinion is that we have liability under the rec program, and we have a beach program, and Saturday it would have been open for use, and it will be open for use. The fact that coincidentally we have this event, in my opinion, wouldn't change that fact. So that single event coverage that you were looking for, and I think Maureen was just suggesting that there was some trepidation by some of the prospective vendors about swimming, and the nature of that activity is one that insurers get a little squirrely about.
Right.
So I don't think, from my perspective, that it's necessary under that single event to get additional, whatever they'll call it, swimmers or.
So the insurance company that Mancuso is going with, it's not even an issue.
Okay.
Actually, their only issue, it's kind of like juggling here. Some people have different issues.
Right.
The issue with this company is just the bounce house, believe it or not. So we have to make sure, and the bounce house vendor does have insurance. And I was told by Mancuso, as long as the town of Stowe and William P. Conley are listed on the bounce house insurance, then everyone's covered.
We
They
should
didn't
be
have a problem.
We should be a named additional insured on all.
You're on everything.
Yeah.
Town of Stowe and William P. Conley, and our Danger Day event is on every single insurance binder.
And that's pro forma. I mean, you would know that because you're not in the business, but for anybody who's a vendor that does business on other property, if they're not carrying liability insurance and/or there's a reluctance to name additionally insured, they probably shouldn't be doing what they're doing. So,
I do think we still had an outstanding question about the limits on the bounce house.
Okay,
Is that what you were talking
is
to
that what-
Evan about?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if, I had went with what Maya recommended, our town.
Let me just suggest that you have these conversations with Maureen offline. I think
Okay.
she's perfectly capable of solving all your questions, all your problems. Unless there's a question from one of my colleagues for Town Administrator, Mr. Conley, I want to thank you for mounting the steep learning curve.
It's been a breeze.
You'll be able to be an event organizer after this, right?
And, well, it's for a very, very worthy cause.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. You guys will all be there on August 19th, right?
I'm planning on being there.
Excellent.
We'll try. That now brings us to the notice of intent that we received on property that was subject, I don't know if, was it subject to a recreational restriction. This is something that those who watch our deliberations know all too well. When a piece of land that's been reserved and obtains special tax preference and treatment for agricultural, conservation, or recreational purposes is sold, then Chapter 61, A, B, or C kicks in, and it gives the town 120 days to decide whether or not to purchase that land at the stated price. We generally, and this is the case with Cross Street, which is that street that goes from Sudbury Road over to Stowe Acres. What's the exact number of that, David? Do you not remember?
I don't remember. I mean, there's no house there currently.
There's no house there, okay. It's not even got a
I don't believe so.
street designation. That explains why we're always seeing Cross Street. Anyway, it's right across, it's right next to the 18th green. It's what,
On the north course.
on the north course. And what our rapid response team did was send out the usual request for interest to all the Stowe boards and committees and interested groups. We have received no responses of interest. In fact, we're receiving, and correct me if I'm wrong, Maureen, we've received statements of no interest from every of the affected committees and communities. Is that correct?
Correct.
So what we will be doing is putting this matter on the agenda for our next meeting on August 22nd to, assuming that everything stays the same, make a decision and probably a vote, not to prejudge the issue, but take a vote not to exercise the town's option to purchase. Any questions or comments? I got that right, Mr. Town Administrator? All right, and thank you, Maureen, for sending out all that, those requests for interest so quickly. We get very little time to respond effectively and efficiently to these requests, but jumping on it quick is a big help. Dave, anything you want to say?
No, I don't believe so.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
Now to the exciting agenda item, and that is a discussion and a vote on additional record access officers and review of the new procedures for public record requests that will be presented by our town administrator.
I've provided you with a draft copy of guidelines that intend to update a process that's we've been engaged in forever, which is every time we get a request for the release of public records, any department in town receives a request. There's a required process under the statutes with established guidelines through the Secretary of State's office. Because of updating, which occurs frequently in this area, as well as others with regard to process, we have decided to provide a written set of guidelines with respect to process from the requester's end and from our end, given the new changes, statutory changes that have occurred. They all relate to process. To some degree, definitions have changed by a word or two. The expectations have been raised by the state with regard to our responsibilities. We don't have as much discretion as we once did. And we have to substantiate now in the event that we're claiming we're unable to meet a request within 10 days. And an appeal to the supervisor of public records is now more easily attained by a requester if a community hasn't responded appropriately from their perspective, and the rest of it. But essentially, the core requirements are the same. In any event, you have a draft there. We're still working on some of that because after review, we modified it some, and I'd like to take a look at a few other modifications on it. But essentially, you have it there. What's important tonight is I'm asking that you essentially vote to appoint that established identified list of individuals as records access officers, together with appointing Linda and I as senior. We have a preferred position.
Yeah.
Which means if a problem arises, you get in touch with the senior access.
Well, it's on the record access officers list, as Selectman Clark just pointed out, it's a super record access officer.
Oh, it's a super? Is that the term?
Super records access officers, yes.
It's RAWs.
And the reason for, so the guidelines under the improved, what I think in some areas improved statute, this is one area. It used to be that custodians of the public records, the policy that I wrote 20 years ago, where essentially I delegated to the custodians. Each department had some, because the records requested are requested of some department, some agent, board of the town. And so my feeling is that those closest to the records would have a better idea when someone makes a request, particularly if it's vague or ambiguous, or someone looks at it when we receive it and when unclear about it. If we have to engage with the requester to get clarity on it, and clarity is important because otherwise you could be wasting a great deal of time, and in the end, especially if you're charging the person who's requesting it, find out that you haven't really hit the sweet spot for it. So each department has here identified a person, and it's the department head. Doesn't mean that the department head will be the person that researches, retrieves, and does the work of providing the required copies. It means they'll be responsible for each request. What we're in the process of working out and haven't done yet, because there's now records reporting at a higher level in more detail than had been in the past. The state wants to see that. There'll be the process of each department. When a request is made and it's been satisfied, that information will go to Linda, be collated, and then eventually we have to report that. My experience is we don't receive a huge number of requests for the release of public records to the degree that we have to do a lot of research and retrieval. It happens occasionally, but it's not frequent. Generally, it's an off-the-shelf request for a copy of an application or minutes of it. Where it gets dicey is when you get somebody who's asking, for example, for, 3 years, copies of 3 years of all documents that relate to some general. Now, you're into some heavy lifting.
And we've had a few of those in the past.
Yeah, we've had a few of those. And I will say this, those generally occur when there's someone who has maybe motivated beyond public interest in general, you know. Don't prejudice any further than that. But it doesn't matter what the motivation is under the statute. They don't technically even have to identify themselves. They don't have to identify the purpose for which they're asking. They can simply make the request, and if it's a public record, you produce it. Anonymity is even possible. I've seen where P.O. boxes could be used, you know. In the cases we've been involved in, we didn't have to worry about who it was because they were proud to be coming in asking for. So, that work in progress, but the important thing is to get these folks named, I think, and we have the baseline for guidelines that we'll continue to tweak a little.
One thing, and you know, I think the way you've got it set up right now is probably fine, but given that there are so many names on there, might it make sense to have, because I suppose we've got to vote on this to adopt it. So if a name changes, we're going to have to vote
No. Well, you'll have to,
because it'll now be a new revision. What I was going to say is maybe have these listed as an addendum that we could vote to have updated.
you're just voting on the list, not the guidelines.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's the
okay.
position that you're voting on. We've put names to it. So,
Right.
but it's the
Okay.
department head, and if otherwise not the department head, it'll be listed there because we have some, you know, technically we don't have department heads, and a few of those boards basically exist by themselves.
Yeah, so
You know.
you could vote by name of certain departments or whatever, but, and if they change, and we may add some more in the future as we get people have access. What we're trying to do is make sure that they have access to the website and to be able to upload minutes and agendas and things like that too.
Madam Town Clerk, is there anything else you'd like to add to the Town Administrator's presentation on this agenda item?
No, I think this is, this will help. I think we are getting more and more requests, and especially since the guidelines as of July 1st, they're encouraging not to charge any fees at all for any of the requests. I've seen an uptick in requests in my office for information, voter lists, voter information, some other documents, residence lists and stuff that I hadn't seen come through before.
I've seen the copying and handling charges that are set out in the guidelines. I know they're not final yet, but I think they're eminently reasonable.
Oh, yeah. The state also encouraging us to get as much as possible online for agendas, minutes, documents, and then we can point the public to those. Some people have already said that that's not convenient. The item is long and they want us to provide it in an electronic format or a different format or something.
Well, I'm sure that you will be judicious in your use of that, but I would suggest that if somebody comes in, wants that, and it's available online, and they have a computer, that's the preferred method, shall we say.
Well, and you can suggest that, it can be preferred, but in the end,
If
the person requesting it.
Wants a
doesn't-
hard copy, we have to provide the hard copy.
Well, and if you do, at that point, then you charge appropriately. You know, but
we are tracking, and it's important to track and know that the things are, the items are completed. So, and also, it helps if we do have a requester that where it becomes burdensome, or if they appeal to the supervisor of public records, we have documentation of when things are done and sent out.
Speaking of,
Responded to.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's right.
Speaking of documentation, Madam Town Clerk, I see in the guidelines, and I think this is probably mirroring the state statute, somebody can come in and make a verbal request.
They could do it over the phone. They could ask if, just come in and say, I'd like a copy of such and such or whatever. And if they do, and we deny that access, they have no way to appeal to the supervisor of public records. And so a written request allows them to do that if they wanted to.
Oh. Yeah, I can't imagine somebody coming in and said, I want this, this, and this, and you'd have to write it down, and then how do we know what the requester is?
We recommend that they write it down or they provide the information and be more specific. And we ask for for them to do it. And we technically cannot ask and say, why do you want that record? Unless they're ambiguous and we say, I have a couple of different records. What exactly are you looking for? Because I might have it in a different format that would be useful or more useful than what they were asking for.
Have many people come in and verbally requested?
Oh yeah, they will sometimes. So oftentimes I'll just say, here, will you please write it down so that I know, and you write out the years of voter history or whatever they want, town meeting results, or so that I don't get it incorrect. I
Certainly
put the onus on them.
There are no qualifiers for this. The whole point is that if it's a public record, you know, an alien could ask for it.
It's not the identity of the requester, it's the manner in which the request is made, and it just seems, yeah, unless it's for a very specific one-off document, to make a verbal request is just asking for trouble.
Well, that's why this is being written the way it is.
Right.
Yes, I know,
Right.
but it does provide for verbal requests.
Well,
Keep
that's
speculating on it.
the statute says.
I know.
The statute says.
Well, perhaps we're spending too much
Yes.
time on this. I'm getting a sense of of my
We
colleagues.
need to
one
talk
on
to
the
the
right.
legislators to change the
Well,
statutes if we want to make
Well,
corrections.
and that's one of the things that I suppose, are you gonna be keeping track, and probably already are, keeping track of hours that people have been putting in on this and?
Up to some degree. I mean, oftentimes it's 10-minute turnaround. You know, if it's a longer search, yes.
Yeah, if somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to set a minute, you point them towards the, you point them towards the website, maybe all you're doing is making a notation. It's a no-brainer.
I just don't think we have a large number of, you know, extensive, I've been in 25 years, it just hasn't been that big. You know,
There are a lot of requests. They're just not extensive.
they're straightforward, most of them.
Yeah, and it's all specified in here, and you're gonna keep making amendments, and there's an hourly charge rate that we can charge, so
Right.
why don't we move forward?
Well, without, I hope it won't
Because
try
we're just
it.
asking you to, right now, we're asking you
I
not
understand.
to make policy, just to
Right,
make,
exactly.
just to do the
But this
the
is,
department heads, and then, as Bill said, we'll work on the guidelines and,
yeah, and I understand. But this-
and that can be changed without coming to your meeting every time.
But this is our opportunity to ask a little bit about the guidelines. Without trying the patience of my colleague to the right, I just want to thank the town administrator and the town clerk for the work they put in devising these and updating these procedures and providing us with the names. And having said that, I will turn to my colleague to the right and ask for a motion.
So my question on this motion references individuals and names, and one instance or two instances specific names. And as we just talked about, it was more the position than the names that we are approving. So the question is, do we make the motion with respect to their titles or with respect to the term individuals or those specifically named?
I would go by the title, and you can make individual adjustments, come back to you in the event that that doesn't fit. But it should be a access officer for each department. And that's what the intent of that list is to give you.
Okay, so you want me to make it?
Yes, please.
All right. In accord with the updated Massachusetts Public Records Law, I move to designate the town administrator and town clerk as, so here, once again, we have a
That's fine.
conflict.
No,
One
that's
says
fine.
super, one says superior.
Super.
As super records access officers for the town of Stowe as named in the document, Town of Stowe Records Access Officers List, 8/8/2017.
Second.
Well, it's not done yet.
Still seconded it. You stopped to take a breath.
I was giving a paragraphical
That was a
pause.
test, and you just failed it, is what it was.
No, I saw the end of it.
In accord with the updated Massachusetts Public Records Law, I move to designate the titles and positions listed in the document, Town of Stowe Record Access Officers List, 8/8/2017, as Records Access Officers, RAOs, for the Town of Stowe.
Mr. Ryan?
Second.
We have a motion and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nay. Madam Administrative Assistant, could you please make this document that we just referenced a record of tonight's meeting? Thank you. Should be included in the agenda, just like all the documents we're covering. Now, thank you very much. Now we can move on to discussion of the permit for the, Alan, I'll tell you what. Let me change things about and go to a discussion vote permit for Bike for the Woods, Sunday, August 27th, because you're here and the ALS aren't here. So
Then you can go home if you
then you can
want.
go home.
That'll be good.
Why don't you come on up and introduce yourself? Not to us, but to the members of the town who might be watching
Hi,
us.
Alan.
Hi, Bill. Sorry. So I'm Alan Fierce.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Don't leave me hanging, Alan.
I'm here actually on behalf of the Stowe Conservation Trust. I'm on the board. We are holding our annual Bike for the Woods, as you said, on Sunday, August 27th. I was asked to come today to bring the certificate of liability insurance, which I obtained from our treasurer, Eve Donahue. That's about what I know. We are all set to go again on Sunday morning. I don't know if you're interested in the release of and waiver of a liability form, which we also have as part of the protection package for this event, which also has people waive any liability to the town or its employees, agents as well. Actually, for all the towns that the ride goes through.
Would you like to tell people here, actually people at home, why they might want to join this event?
Because it's a great event. It's a bicycling event that's for recreational riders, families, children. There are rides of various lengths, short, medium, long. They're laid out on roads throughout the area, not just in Stowe, but a number of the surrounding towns. It's a beautiful ride, particularly on a nice day. I should also add as a personal note, one of my favorite reasons for attending is that among the food options available for free to any of the people attending are peaches from Carver Hill,
nice.
which
Yeah.
on August 27th will be just about perfect. And I have shown up on a number of occasions when I couldn't stay for the ride just to have the peaches. So don't miss it. Come on over.
And it all goes to benefit the Stowe
It does.
Conservation Trust.
It's one of our fundraising events that we do annually, along with the Run for the Woods. Of course, we're in the middle of a major fundraising event. I don't know where the TV camera is.
It's on you, don't worry.
Save Stowe's Farms. As you know, the town has appropriated significant sums of money, but not all of the money that's needed to acquire Carver Hill and a small farm. We're still in the process of raising substantial additional monies at the trust, and so monies raised from the Bike for the Woods will probably be applied to that fundraising campaign. So that's another reason to attend. Save Stowe's Farms.
Well, thank you and everyone who's
In our
supporting
package,
this
we
event.
actually have a
You
little
might-
more detail on that.
You can
and
show it to
sounds-
people.
Sounds like there's rides from 5 to 65 miles,
That's right.
$15 per rider, and less for kids under a certain age.
Right. Depending on
picture of
whether
this.
to register in advance, and we
Yeah,
recommend
put that in
people
the
register in
paper.
advance.
And
Okay.
how could people actually register, and who would they contact?
You can go to the Stowe Conservation Trust website. Just Google Stowe Conservation Trust, you'll find it. Or you can just show up on the morning of the event. It starts at about 8:30. I recommend people get there around 8 o'clock.
And where does it start?
Right on the town common, right across from the Unitarian Church, First Parish.
Yeah, Mr. Ryan's made it easy for you.
All right.
If I'm back from vacation, I will be here.
I love peaches.
So that, the only thing I thought the package was missing was the certificate of liability insurance. We don't have that. We have the operational plan from the Stowe Police. It looked fine to me. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments?
None for me.
Nope, I think it's a very, very worthwhile cause, and thank you guys for doing it all.
Thanks for hosting once again.
Then I will turn to my colleague to the right and again ask for motion.
Not two in one night. With the approval of public safety officials, I move to approve the use of the town public ways for the Stowe Conservation Trust Bike for the Woods on Sunday, August 27th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Thank you very much for
Thank
coming in.
you.
Thank you.
And thank you for moving me out of order.
Now we will drop back to discussion vote permit for the 2017 Ride to Defeat ALS on Sunday, September 24th. I take it we don't have anyone presenting, but the package was fairly complete.
And you might just want to read where that is.
I'm going to leave that to our salesman, Mr. Ryan.
Where that is?
It actually starts at the Wayland, excuse me,
The
the
Longfellow.
Longfellow
And then,
Tennis Club.
I'll give this to Tom. You just can't find it.
All right. Let's see.
The date is
This is from the Stowe Police operational plan for it, and it's going to be on September 24th. It's going to take the ride sponsored by ALS. It begins and ends at the Longfellow Club in Wayland with a starting time of 7 a.m. for the 70-mile ride, 9 a.m. for the 50-mile ride, and 10 a.m. for a 25-mile ride, and 11 a.m. for a 10-mile ride. We have actually a map of it, and it goes through a small part of Stowe.
The 50 and 70 mile riders.
But this is something that they've been coordinating with the public safety folks on a regular basis, and another good cause.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ryan. I'm sure people at home are interested in that. Any questions or comments? Then, again, my colleague to the right, I will ask for motion.
Tom's only done one tonight.
It's fine.
All right. With the
I don't feel
approval
bad.
of public safety officials, I
You're on a
move
roll.
to approve the use of town public ways for the 2017 Ride to Defeat ALS bike ride on Sunday, September 24th, 2017.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Again, that's unanimous. Thank you. Let's see. Now that takes us to an item that Mr. Ryan asked to be placed on the agenda, and I will turn to him.
Yeah, after our last meeting, where we approved the use of the public ways for the Warrior Thunder Foundation to walk through Stowe, which, as you know, I questioned a little why we had to do it, but it's a good cause, and what it did is it started me thinking. So at the time, we didn't actually know where through town they were going, and Maureen graciously contacted them, and at the same time, I contacted Joe Jacobs, who is our veterans agent, and Joe Jacobs ended up also calling this Warrior Thunder Foundation, found out a little bit more about them and about what they were trying to do, and what we did is basically kind of offered to buy them breakfast. And since after I started this out and with Maureen's help, and then what we've done right now is we've kind of turned it over to Joe as our veterans agent, and he's spoken to these guys a couple of times, and what they're going to be doing is they'll be coming down, they'll be in Stowe between about 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. On Saturday, August 19th. And what they'll be doing is they'll be coming down Boxborough Road, then down Crescent Street, and out onto 117, and then walking down 117 to, towards Maynard. Now, you know, after we started finding out a little bit more about it, basically these guys, as you know from our last meeting, they're planning on walking 200 miles. They're going from Pittsfield down to Plymouth. That's their total run. So after Joe Jacobs talked to them a little bit, they're psyched to be able to get, you know, breakfast and meet some town officials. They'd love people to come out and cheer them on. As they said in their other stuff, that they'd love to see people walk with them. But basically, we're gonna have probably a little 10 or 15 minute thing for them at the shopping plaza, which is on their route. We'll buy them breakfast and send them on their way, because walking 200 miles, they can't stop for a whole long time. But we thought it would, you know, after talking to Joe, we thought it was, you know, a worthwhile thing. I wanted to kind of give them a little bit of publicity, as well as, you know, when I first started talking to Joe about it, I wasn't sure even how long they were planning on being in town, and I put it on the agenda so that if the Board of Selectmen wanted to do something a little bit more, we could, but they're not gonna be around long enough to do anything, other than maybe come and say hi to them. So Joe Jacobs is arranging for them to get breakfast, and Representative Hogan or some of her crew are going to be there, to my understanding, and I'm planning on going down and being with Joe, help him get set up, whatever he wants to set up, and then we'll kind of go forward from there.
And
But
that starts at 6 a.m., you think?
what they're doing is, their plan is to be hitting the border and Stowe up around Boxborough Road about 6 a.m. Their plan is to be at the shopping center probably around 7 a.m. I suppose it's also subject to weather and how they're going, but it's going to be 9 veterans doing the walking. They're gonna have a small RV behind them with a sign so that they don't get picked off on the side of the road. I believe Maureen's passed the actual route on to the police department, and you know, so it's if people see guys in camo walking down Boxborough Road at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning,
It's not an invasion.
it's not an invasion by Boxborough or anything like that. But you know, I think it would be nice. The reason for this walk, based on their website, is that they're, and I'll just read it from there. It's a 200-mile ruck across Massachusetts to help raise awareness to the needs of veterans, specifically the need for them to become part of the community after service, the prevention of suicide, and to raise charitable donations for the programs that they help. So anybody who's interested in finding out more about this group, their name is actually, I mentioned it earlier, it's warriorthunderfoundation.org. And you can find them on the website. But
Yeah, I'll try to go. That sounds good.
yeah, you know, it's early in the morning, but I think it's a worthy cause, and you know, where I kind of took some of it on myself, and then, you know, I wanted to make sure that the board knew what I was up to, and see if they had any other thoughts, or if they'd like to come out.
I hope that, I'll try to be there. I hope that everyone in Stowe will be there on Saturday morning.
They'll be met by 5,900.
August 19th. Well,
I'll be out cheering them on at my house.
that'll
There
be-
you go.
They're right there.
that'll be
And
encouraging.
that's actually one of the things that they said, is that in their original information to us, that they'd love for people to either just wave to them or come out, walk with them and talk to them for a few minutes while they're cruising along. But, you know, I thought that they might like a quick place to stop. We can arrange to, you know, for a potty break or something like that, and, you know, help promote their cause a little, which is a very worthy cause.
Well, thank you for your patriotic enthusiasm and support of this group, Mr. Ryan. I'm glad that you followed up on this. And again, I hope everyone will be there Saturday morning, August 19th at 7 a.m., the Stowe Shopping Center. And then we can adjourn to the Ari Schultz benefit later on that afternoon.
It's gonna be a long day.
I see this is down here for a vote. Is there anything that...
Nope, there's nothing really to vote on at this point. I wasn't sure kind of when this was going on, so I figured I would just, you know, kind of get it put onto the agenda. You know, if our veterans agent, Joe Jacobs, had come up with some more interest, you know, some other information, we might have done it a little, we might have done something different. But as I said, he said that they're not planning on really being around very long because they've got a long way to go. And I should say that kudos to Joe Jacobs for picking up on this. As soon as he got word for it, he started checking out this organization, made a few calls to them, and you know, as I said, Maureen started it, but Joe's the point man on it right now, and thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. If there are no other questions or comments, I think we can move on to the town administrator's report.
One of the items that I provided in my written report, we covered earlier with regard to the records officers and the charity event and such. I did want to provide additional information to the board on a matter that I raised at our last meeting dealing with the library, the installation of the new HVAC in the lower level, but more specifically, going back a couple of years with regard to air quality, which is what started the entire process for us, was the concern about the air quality in the lower level, the dampness, went through the air duct deficiencies. But just wanted to let you know that Craig is contracted with a analytics firm that we're going to do a before and after air grab, and the analytics will go through a list of particulates that first would be common in some that, so spores and fungi and asbestos and other things. And then we're going to do an after, because once the installation of the new HVAC is put in, and as I said, we plugged up the other ducts that had been underwater essentially, pushing wet air, it'll be interesting to see what the air quality difference will be. So I just wanted to provide you with that.
Thank you.
We'll take it before and after.
Any questions or comments for the town administrator? And seeing none, I would suggest that we allow our town administrator to head west.
Could I make one request?
Of course.
Right at the
I'm sorry?
beginning. I'm going to talk about the note that Chief Landry sent. So what I'd like to do is have our fine town administrator here for a couple more minutes so that he can add anything that he wants, because it's, to me, it's something that really shows the leadership from the top, which Mr. Wrigley is very much a part of.
I don't think he'll be objecting to getting some pats on the back.
Do I get a badge or a ribbon?
We'll get you one of those little fire hats that they have down at the fire department. So
One of those plastic ones. I think I have one of those.
I take it we're going on to liaison.
Yes,
reports.
and
Might I start, sir?
you certainly may, and thank you for following up on this.
I think you all got the note that Chief Landry had put together to begin with. And when I read it, it told me a couple different things. On top of him being a top-notch leader in our you know, in town, that he's definitely not shy about sharing when other people do a good job. That's why I definitely wanted everybody to see what he'd written. And, you know, this all, for everybody at home, basically Chief Landry had sent out a note to me as liaison to public safety, praising the work of all the public safety departments in town and how well they worked together last Wednesday with all the stormy weather. That day, the fire department itself answered 21 different calls. The police log between about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 11 o'clock at night, there were a total of 27 calls. They were all funneled through the police department and had to be dispatched, a combination of police, fire, police and fire, police, fire, and highway department. And one of the people that Chief Landry was very, very appreciative of and very complimentary of is dispatcher Darlene Treffry. She ended up handling an awful lot of calls, kept everything moving, and kept everybody coordinated. I'd read the whole thing to you, but I know the people on my board here have all seen it. But I think the statement that Chief Landry made that really shows what this was all about goes as follows. By no means am I saying that this was the biggest event in Stowe to tax our public safety and highway departments, but I will say that it was a very sizable event that hasn't been seen in many years. I'm proud to say that it has reinforced my confidence that through progressive training, preparedness, the men and women that serve the town of Stowe are ready for whatever is dealt to them, and that they will handle it in an efficient and professional manner. So really, kudos to Dispatcher Treffry, kudos to the Stowe Police Department, Stowe Fire Department, Stowe Highway Department for going out and really working together and getting the job done. And thank you for, you know, Chief Landry for spending the time to write it up and give all the people that worked really, really hard in a professional manner their due. And there was also an additional note that I got from Chief Bosworth that echoed what Chief Landry had said. And so it's, I think it's a very, very good showing for all our public safety folks. And as I mentioned, Mr. Wrigley, who actually on a day-to-day oversees it all and fosters that kind of cooperation between all the departments. So kudos to everybody.
Sure.
That's my liaison.
I would like to add a comment to that.
I was gonna ask.
One of the things that, you know, and again, I always harken back to my military days, I suppose, but it's a pure military thing, is that the training that is required is training that goes on constantly for all the public safety. You don't see it, you don't hear much about it. It's routine. It becomes a nuisance to many of these folks who've been here a long time, but it's every day doing something repetitive with regard to being, and the intended purpose is that when we used to call the balloon goes up, everybody knows what it is they're supposed to do, and they simply do it. They go on, and we used to use the terms improvise, adapt, overcome, because that's what you do. And so when you're faced with, you know, you don't panic, you adjust, and that's what training does for you, regardless of what business you're in. But when you're in public safety business, you know, lives are at stake when you make a mistake or you don't make a mistake. And so our folks are well trained. They take it seriously. They take the job seriously, and that's really what makes the difference. Because if you've got folks in this business who don't take it seriously, and they don't have a heartfelt interest in it, they don't train well, they don't take the time to self-train, which has to occur in this as well. So when you're not going to the group training and all the rest of it, every day that you're on that job and there's downtime, you're thinking about what happens if A or B, and then how will you react. And we've got some well-trained, well-motivated folks in our public safety, and it shows.
And, you know, as you read through that, you know, there were groups of some of the firefighters that ended up splitting up so that they could cover multiple things. And as Chief Landry said, you know, they took it upon themselves. They didn't put their own well-being first, which might have been better to stay as a group, but they had multiple interests to serve, and basically they got the job done. So it's kudos to all the men and women that are on the department and who went out and did what they had to do. So
That's great to hear, and it's probably one of the best liaison reports we've had on my term. But unless you'd like to add or question something, then
Off to the friendly town.
with our blessings.
And I told you about Hulu, didn't I?
But what?
Castle Rock, Town of Orange, Stephen King's novels about the imaginary town he's from Maine. Isn't it interesting? They're filming in Orange, Massachusetts, about a town.
They're also filming in Lancaster.
Yes, Lancaster as well, and they've got their studios, their internal is at Devon's. So they've got I didn't know there was an entire studio up there, but that's where but Sissy SpaceX, I never heard of Hulu. I didn't know what it was, and don't read Stephen King, but when I saw 2,000 people standing in the center of Orange waiting to try to get a little piece of the action, I said, what the hell's going on?
Mass must have better tax breaks than Maine.
I don't know what it is.
tax breaks.
In any event, exciting the senses of a lot of people and all that.
Thank you, Mr. Town Administrator.
Good night.
Ms. Hageman Clark, do you have any?
I don't have any. I know that Mott's taking August off, and we have a meeting scheduled for September.
Yes, and we've been invited.
That's correct, you have.
And I have already replied saying that I'll be there,
Thank you.
as long as I'm
very much.
reminded. It's a long way
Well, I
away.
just reminded you, September 5th, I believe.
I think it was September 9th.
Oh, sorry. Then-
But I'm not sure.
I'll be there on September 5th.
But I don't know if I responded globally, because I tend not to do that, if at all advisable. But, yeah, I did respond to Mr. Salvi, saying that thought it was a gracious invitation. I look forward to attending. But, well, we get the right date.
It's the 6th.
It's the 6th.
So both of you were.
Well,
Both of us are.
Well, I'm just.
I was gonna be there on the 5th, man.
Well,
really.
then
I can't make it now.
then you'd be at the Conservation Commission, that's that night.
I think I do have it in my calendar, but thank you for correcting us. Now, the only thing I'm going to report on is there's something that the town administrator has been talking to us about with respect to the joining forces between the cemetery committee and highway department, and trying to maximize some efficiencies of scale there. It seems as though, I don't know if anyone read about it, but they would like a liaison to be appointed, and for some reason they've asked for me, probably because a lot of my political support comes from the cemetery.
What?
Dead voters.
My dead voters. That's
Jeez
my biggest
Louise.
block. But
That's your base, huh?
that's my base.
Yeah.
But
Did you mean to say that with the town clerk here?
Well, I know it's not true.
You're welcome to investigate it, both of you. But what I think that we need to do is, I've asked Maureen to get an updated liaison appointment list, and I've asked to be appointed to that. I will send cemetery an email saying that I'd be happy to liaison with them if they would like. And the only other thing is that Maureen and I have been working on some of the minutes that need to be approved, especially executive session minutes. That always scares the heck out of me because they're so easy to lose track of. So Maureen and I are working about presenting the Board of Selectmen with not only executive session minutes, but approvals for release of executive session minutes, because sometimes you approve the minutes and then they hang out there. And what I was talking about with Maureen is doing is scheduling the executive session in which we have to approve executive session minutes and release executive session minutes. Before the actual Board of Selectmen meeting. We could start it at around 6:30. It should go very quickly. That way we'd have the town administrator's input without delaying his return. And we could even end up sooner. We might have it for August 22nd. If not, we'll have it in September. And the town administrator and I will look over to check for approvals. And approval for release
Right,
dates.
yeah. I'll have to see, because to get here at 6:30, it may be more difficult for me. So it's usually, as it is, I eat dinner in my car.
I don't even eat dinner on these nights.
Then you won't be missing anything, will you?
I won't.
Alternatively, we could just, instead of having an executive session at the end of the meeting, we could have it at the beginning, at 7 o'clock.
If it's only gonna be one night, I could probably stretch it, as long as there isn't that much studying that I have to do.
Well, we will give you of course, any minutes and suggested releases well before the meeting, and Maureen and I will get back to you.
So at this time, we're talking about an earlier meeting on August 22nd. Or you don't know yet?
You don't know yet.
Okay.
Maureen's got to crank
right.
those out, and Phoebe's on vacation.
Okay,
So
so it could be in September.
it could be in September,
fine.
but I was just going to noodle about with you the idea of
Just
doing
bring
it.
up one of those bars or something, and then,
I'll bring you some McDonald's French fries.
oh, no, thank you.
Bring supper, just bring supper.
You just
It's exciting, me and no TV.
Italian subs, pizza. That would be so gross, we'd be sitting here.
On TV.
No,
No,
not
it's
an
not
executive
TV.
session.
Oh, that's right. We can, yes,
We are still on TV.
I know, but we're being very informal.
Any other informalities you'd like to engage in?
No.
Well, then, I will
Would
take...
you like a motion?
I will take a motion.
You want to do this one, Tom?
No, you're getting
You're on a
really
roll.
good at it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous consent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw this outline.